The day they celebrated me, then erased. I didn't scream when it happened. I didn't even blink. I just stood there in that glittering conference hall, my invention being praised, my name echoing through the room, while the CEO placed his hand on my shoulder and announced his son would be taking over everything I built. People clapped, cameras flashed, and I felt myself split cleanly in half. The woman they thought they could humiliate, and the woman I was about to become. They had no idea what I was holding behind my calm smile, or how fast their empire would unravel once I moved in silence. If you've ever been replaced, overlooked, or underestimated, stay with me. Subscribe and tell me in the comments if you've lived a moment like this. I didn't walk into that atrium expecting a celebration. I thought it was another emergency briefing about supply chain delays or compliance inspections, the kind of meetings I had been drowning in for months. So when the doors swung open and a wall of applause hit me like a physical force, I froze. Dozens of employees stood shoulder to shoulder, holding signs with my name on them, chanting, "Molly, Molly," like I was some kind of hometown hero returning from victory. It felt surreal, unreal, almost wrong. They decorated the entire floor with chrome streamers and enormous cutouts of the robotic exoskeleton I had engineered, the prototype that was projected to revolutionize industrial safety systems. The same prototype I had spent 18-hour days perfecting. The same one I had nearly lost my job defending when the board wanted to cut funding. And now the company was celebrating it like they had believed in me all along. A massive banner hung on the glass wall. Reve Exoframe, 320% efficiency increase, record-breaking innovation. People clapped harder when they saw me staring at it, and my throat tightened in a way I didn't expect. Pride, exhaustion, vindication. For a moment, just a moment, I let myself breathe. Then Victor Hale, our CEO, stepped forward, placing both hands on my shoulders like a benevolent king blessing his loyal knight. "Molly Reyes saved this company," he said into the microphone. "We would not have survived the year without her." It should have felt good. It should have meant something. But the way he said it, flat, performative, made something uneasy stir in my gut. Cameras flashed. My team cheered. Victor lifted his champagne glass. "And today," he continued, "marks the beginning of a new chapter in leadership." My stomach dropped. Not because I feared losing anything. I had been promised the new innovation director role for months, but because his tone didn't match the celebration. It was too rehearsed, too smooth, like he was reading a script someone else wrote. The doors opened behind him, and in walked Carter, his son. Not in an oversized suit this time, but in a company-branded lab coat that still had its folds from the packaging. The symbolism wasn't even subtle. He didn't belong in a lab. He had never set foot in mine, never touched a soldering iron, never reviewed a single line of code. "I'm proud to announce," Victor said, "that Carter will be stepping in as the new director of innovation." The cheers died instantly. It was like someone pulled the plug on the entire room. My heart didn't drop. It hardened, calcified. Carter grinned like a kid who'd just been handed a trophy he didn't know how to hold. "I'm excited to bring a fresh perspective," he said, shooting a clueless smile at me. I forced myself to smile back. Victor bent toward me, his voice low enough for only me to hear. "You'll walk him through everything, starting tomorrow." The audience saw a proud mentor accepting a leadership change, but inside me, something shifted with a clarity I couldn't ignore. It wasn't rage, it wasn't shock, it was recognition. I finally understood the truth. They weren't just replacing me. They were planning to take my invention and erase my name from it entirely, and they had no idea I already held proof that the prototype wasn't theirs to claim. I didn't go back to my office right away. I walked the long way around the atrium, past the plexiglass displays of past inventions, the ones they celebrated as if they were monuments instead of tombstones for the people who'd actually built them. My footsteps echoed in that quiet hallway, steady and controlled, even though everything inside me was tightening into something razor sharp. When I finally reached my office, I closed the door gently, not like someone who'd been blindsided, but like someone who'd been expecting this exact moment. And the truth was, I had. People think betrayal comes out of nowhere, but it doesn't. It leaks. Slowly, quietly. It shows up in the missed acknowledgments, the sudden silences in meetings, the way leadership stops asking for your opinion even though you're the one who built the thing they're selling. Victor had started bringing Carter to briefings months earlier, calling it exposure to operations. First, he'd quietly observe, then he'd add suggestions, and then he'd stand beside his father during presentations like he was already in charge. I had noticed. Of course I had. You don't spend your life as a woman in engineering without developing an instinct for when credit is being shifted away from you. That instinct is the reason I'd started gathering everything. My insurance file, as I jokingly called it to myself. But it wasn't a joke. It was a digital vault containing every version of my exoskeleton code, every time-stamped schematic, every internal email regarding the prototype's testing failures. Failures Victor had ordered me to hide from the board. Not to falsify, not to fix, just to bury. I had refused. I documented everything instead, including the night Carter tried to access the lab servers with a credential he wasn't cleared for. He probably thought I didn't know, but the system had pinged me instantly because I wrote the authentication architecture myself. That was the night I realized something dangerous. They didn't just want my work. They wanted control over it. Control meant ownership. Ownership meant erasure. And erasure required replacing the person who knew too much. Sitting alone in my office, I opened the encrypted folder, my hands steady. There it all was. The original patent draft with my name as sole inventor, the safety reports Victor told me to reinterpret, the meeting notes where Carter insisted the exoskeleton could be mass-produced without reinforcing the load-bearing structure, something that would have killed workers in the field. I scrolled through it all slowly, absorbing the quiet power in each file. This wasn't leverage, it was truth. Truth they hoped I'd be too shocked or too loyal to use. But loyalty was a two-way contract, and they had shredded theirs the moment they handed my life's work to a man whose biggest accomplishment was passing a networking exam his father paid for. A notification pinged. A message from Lior in legal, just 3 words. Heard the news. I didn't reply. Instead, I plugged in my external drive and transferred the updated folder. Then I drafted a message to Bennett Cole, head of procurement for one of the largest aerospace suppliers in the country. He'd been waiting to see the prototype's authentic safety data for months. Victor had blocked every request. I typed, "Lunch tomorrow? Urgent, confidential." My finger hovered for a half second, not from doubt but from awareness. This wasn't the start of a reaction. It was the continuation of a plan I never wanted to use. They thought humiliating me would make me disappear. What they didn't understand was that I had already positioned every piece on the board, and I wasn't the one about to lose. I showed up the next morning before sunrise, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I needed the extra hour to clear my mind before dealing with Carter. The lab always felt different in the early hours. Quiet, humming, alive. My exoskeleton prototype stood locked in its charging frame like a sleeping animal, blue indicator lights pulsing gently. At least it recognized me, even if the company no longer did. I was tightening a calibration sensor when I heard him behind me. "Dad said we should start early," Carter announced, his voice carrying that casual entitlement of someone who believes the world bends to his convenience. He wasn't wearing proper lab gear, just the branded coat again, still crisp, still untouched by any real work. It didn't matter. I had already decided how this would go. I turned, professional smile in place. "Perfect, let's begin." For the next hour, I did exactly what they expected a loyal employee to do. Walk the air through the basics. Only the basics. Nothing proprietary, nothing structural, nothing that would let him replicate or modify the prototype without triggering catastrophic failure. I explained how the motion sensors worked, the responsiveness algorithms, the hydraulic balancing interface. He nodded along, absorbing maybe 10% of what I said and pretending to understand the rest. Every few minutes he'd check his watch, like he expected the system to download itself into his skull. "So," he said, leaning against the lab table like a model posing for a tech brochure. "When do I get access to the deeper files, the proprietary stuff?" "When you've demonstrated you grasp the fundamentals," I replied smoothly. Innovation requires groundwork. He smirked. Dad says I'll pick it up fast. Your father is optimistic, I answered, keeping my tone neutral even as my thoughts sharpened. This wasn't a person hungry to learn. This was someone expecting to be handed mastery. I opened a systems dashboard on the monitor and walked him through the interface. These logs track performance, stress distribution, and mechanical strain, I said. If you ignore them, the suit could malfunction during a field test. So we can just turn off the strain limits, right? He asked. My stomach tightened. No, that would void every safety protocol we have. But it would speed up the demo, he insisted. Faster results look better to investors. I stared at him for a beat too long. That was when it clicked. He wasn't interested in innovation. He was interested in optics, the illusion of genius, the performance of competence. He wanted the spotlight without the substance. The danger wasn't that he was unqualified, it was that he didn't care what damage his shortcuts could cause. I realized then how much Victor had banked on my silence, on my obedience, on the idea that I'd swallow humiliation the way so many women in this industry before me had been forced to. But I wasn't here to help this boy become the face of my work. I was here to gather information, to observe, to confirm what I already knew, that putting him in charge would destroy the company from the inside, and I didn't have to lift a finger to make that happen. He was perfectly capable of lighting the match himself. Just before 9, he checked his watch again. I've got a meeting with the communications team, he said, heading for the door. They want to prep my press profile. Of course they did. He paused, turning back with a smirk. Hey, Molly, don't worry, I'll take good care of your project. I smiled at him, calm and steady. I'm sure you will. He left. I locked the lab door behind him. Then I pulled out my phone and opened Bennett Cole's reply to my message from last night. 2 words. Name the time. I typed back, 12, my usual place. Bring no one. My hands didn't shake. My pulse didn't spike. If anything, I felt lighter than I had in months. Teaching Carter had confirmed everything I needed. He wasn't ready. He wasn't careful. He wasn't a leader. And soon, he wouldn't be a problem. The pieces were already moving. He just didn't know he was one of them. I arrived at the restaurant early, choosing a corner table with a full view of the entrance. It wasn't paranoia, it was habit. When you've spent years presenting your work to boards who pretend to listen while planning how to use you, you learn to control your environment. Bennett walked in exactly on time. No assistant, no entourage. Just the quiet confidence of someone who has spent decades deciding which companies live or die. He shook my hand, firm but curious, his eyes scanning my face like he already sensed something was wrong. Molly, he said as he sat down, you sounded urgent. It is. I didn't waste time on small talk. I opened the folder I'd brought with me, laying out printed reports like cards in a game only I knew how to play. These are the authentic performance and safety metrics of the exoskeleton prototype, I said, not the ones submitted to your department? Bennett frowned, adjusting his glasses. He read the first page, then the second, his jaw tightening with each line. These strain values are significantly higher than what we were told, he said. This suggests a structural failure under heavy industrial load. It doesn't suggest it, I corrected quietly. It guarantees it. He looked up sharply. People around us chatted casually over salads and wine, unaware that everything they were building, transporting, designing could be impacted by what lay on that table. Victor signed off on these? Bennett asked. No, I said. He signed off on the falsified ones. Carter plans to present the prototype next quarter as production ready. Bennett let out a slow breath, the kind that comes from realizing you've been played. Do you understand what would happen if this passed into field testing? People could die, I answered, and I